Morning.
Morning, Julie.
Can you hear me?
You sound great.
Donna, see you. Can you hear me?
I can
can
hear
hear
you.
Hold on.
Anybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh,
Can you hear us?
yes, perfect.
Great.
Good morning.
Morning.
Excellent.
Morning, Julie.
Jumping between locations and platforms. Sorry that I wasn't set up right.
You sound good now.
Excellent. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Wow.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Adrian.
Adrian, are you on the phone?
Yeah, I'm on the phone. Having a computer problem.
Okay.
I can see the screen on my phone.
Okay, that's good. You sound good too. Julie, we have a quorum. It is 9:01. I think we can begin whenever you're ready.
All right, excellent. We'd like to welcome everyone to the December 9th Landmarks Commission meeting. Even though it's remote, we're very happy to see everyone. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rule of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you keep your microphone on mute and use the raised hand function or feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raise hand icon again and muting your microphone. We will be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located in the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website and email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. We'd like to call the December 9th, 2021 Landmarks meeting to order. Mr. Pettit, please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson,
Here.
Ms. Bailey,
Here.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Here.
Mr. Colicchia, Mr. Colicchia, Director Collier, Mr. Dryer,
Here.
Councilman Jones, Mr. Santora, Mr. Strickland,
Yes, here.
Mr. Tarasik,
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
Madam Chair, we are also joined today by staff members Carl Brunges, who is our host, Emily Spasia-Schwiff, who is our AmeriCorps member, and our representative from the Law Department, Kevin Roberts. We have a quorum.
Excellent. We begin today with our certificates of appropriateness. A little housekeeping to start off is that the facilitator or host controls your slides, so please announce when you would like them to be advanced. We'll begin with the Hovis residence located at 1723 West 32nd Street, roof replacement and solar panel addition. For the applicant, please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Hello, my name is David Hovis. My wife Jennifer cannot be here today, unfortunately, as she is a physician. She takes care of our nation's veterans, and she is seeing patients today. Could you please move to the next slide? So a little bit of background here. We currently live in this house. We bought the house in 2010 in the fire damaged condition, which you can see on the left. We did a full gut rehab, including a deep energy retrofit, which not only brought the house, back to livable condition, but also reduced the energy usage by 80%. We received numerous awards for this. You can move to the next slide. We were awarded the 2011 Ohio City Residential Preservation Award. We were featured on the 2011 Ohio City Home Tour. We were in Freshwater Cleveland, Home Energy Magazine as examples of not just renovation, but sustainable and green renovation. Next slide, please. We financed our renovation partly through the Cleveland Restoration Society's program as well as the cash program. They used our house as a poster child, if you will, in the advertisement you see on the right there that was in Cleveland Magazine. And we as our family have been featured numerous times as examples of that it is possible to raise a family. We also helped start Near West Intergenerational School, which is in our neighborhood here across the park from our house in the old Kentucky school building, which you can see behind us and our children there in the lower left-hand picture. Next screen. Unfortunately, well, we did a very extensive renovation. In fact, as we went through it, the project scope kept getting bigger because we found more things. So basically everything in the house ended up having to be replaced, or almost everything. Unfortunately, while we did redo the roof completely, by 2019, we started losing shingles. We did get somebody up there it took a while because it's very hard to get anybody to go up and work on this roof because it is very high and very steep. We did eventually had our builder who did the renovation for us called in some favors, got somebody up there, repaired some shingles, and then we've just continued to lose more shingles. So, and at the time we had hoped, considering that the roof had been allegedly had a 30-year warranty, that we wanted to add solar and we should have enough life on this roof to be able to add solar to it. This kind of derailed things because if the roof wasn't in good condition, we really can't put solar on top of it. Now, next slide. We considered a bunch of options here. We could replace again with asphalt shingles. There are steel shingles available that look like slate. There are solar tiles from Tesla in particular, and then there's standing seam. And there are issues with each of these. If you there's pluses and minuses to all of these. And I just want to walk you through the reason why we're choosing what we're choosing here, which next slide, please. Asphalt shingles have had quality problems over the recent years. It's not hard to find stories about class action lawsuits and, particular brands and lines of shingles that just turn out to be terrible. They're cheaply produced. It is, we thought we bought good shingles 10 years ago, and clearly what we got were not good. It is possible to mount solar atop asphalt shingles, but you have to be careful about how you do it so that you don't get water ingress. Next slide. Metal shingles, certainly more durable, great appearance, but the manufacturer says this is not compatible with solar. So because we want to add solar, that isn't an option. Next slide, please. The Tesla solar shingles sound like a great idea. Unfortunately, the jury's still kind of out. The only source of these, they're very expensive, although in theory, if you combine the cost of a new roof with the cost of solar, supposedly it's a bit of a wash, but Tesla is the only source of these. They don't actually have, until relatively recently, they wouldn't even sell them in Ohio. Now they say they will, although they then immediately tack on a $20,000 out of region fee because they don't have any installers in this area. And Tesla's also sort of very far backed up. So this is, at the moment, this is not particularly an option. It's not really available. It's more of a paper, theoretical availability. So the last one here is Next slide, please. Standing seam metal, right? It is a historic style of roof that, well, maybe not used in this neighborhood so much. It has been used in the United States since the beginning of the 19th century. It's very durable. It should be expected to last at least 50 years. It is also the preferred roof for solar, in part because the panel racks can be clamped directly to the seams, which means that there's no additional roof penetration, which in turn means that, you know, the roof integrity isn't, there's no issue with adding additional holes to your roof. You just clamp directly to the seams. Next slide, please. Now, there are numerous houses in Ohio City numerous prominent houses in Ohio City that have standing seam metal roofs, at least 3 of which you can see from various windows in our house because they're all within a half a block of our house. I've provided numerous examples here. Probably the most prominent is the one that's shown twice actually in the middle and then the bottom left. That is over on 1800 Fulton, which is very prominently visible as you drive up and down Fulton Avenue. Next slide, please. So what we are proposing is to put standing seam metal roof on the house. We would like to fix it permanently and not have to worry about further maintenance issues. This is an upgrade. It is more expensive than an asphalt roof. We're using First Choice Roofing, who's done similar roofs in the neighborhood, and we want to use a standing seam product as shown here in the burnished slate color. We think the house probably had a slate roof once upon a time, although it's been a long time. I'm sorry, actually, I just got a text message from Kerry McCormick. He says he can't get in to the meeting and asks, could you please could you send the link to his email, please?
Thank you. I'll send that right now.
Okay. So the plan would be standing seam with striations. Now these striations are there because a conventional standing seam roof would be flat in between the seams. However, because of the thermal expansion and contraction as the roof heats up and cools down over the course of the day, has a tendency to get what's known as an oil canning effect, and it gives it sort of an uneven look. These striations allow the roof to expand and contract without creating a visual difference. Next slide, please. You know, this is showing, sort of trying to show, I'm an engineer, but I'm not an architect. But this is roughly what the standing seam, you know, where the seams would look like from the southern elevation of the house. Now, in addition, the second phase of this, next slide, please, is we would like to add solar, and there are not as many examples of solar, but there are plenty of examples. There are several, including several prominent ones, such as Great Lakes Brewing Company. There's a relatively new house on brand new construction house on West 38th Street that had solar, and several other examples, such as 4110 Bridge, which is the upper right-hand example. Next slide, please. So we would like to, because one of the, you know, sales pitches to us for buying this house at the time was that it has a very nice large south-facing roof, and a south-facing roof is ideal for solar. So it's always been our plan to add solar to this roof when we could afford it, and we have finally reached a point, despite having gone $150,000 over our original budget 10 years ago. We're finally caught up here and we can afford this. We would like to put solar panels on and maximize the use of the roof for generation of carbon-free electricity, right? we not that the economics of this matter too much, but this proposed array should pay for itself in 8 years and have a 30-year useful life, and over that will offset about half of our electric usage in our house, which will reduce our carbon footprint of our family by 20,000 pounds per year, or 600,000 pounds over the life of the panels. So next slide. It's just my summary. We saved this house from demolition in 2010, completed a rehab with an award-winning deep energy retrofit. The plan to add solar is really the only practical way we could lower the house's current HERS 38 score below and actually lower our energy usages by we would have to generate electricity. There's no easy ways to improve efficiency. It is about as efficient a house as it can be from an insulation perspective now, despite being a 130-year-old house. The current roof hasn't held up, and the homeowners, we just do not trust current asphalt shingle options. And other options we did consider are impractical for a variety of reasons, some of which are just associated with availability, and some of them are around the compatibility with solar. Standing seam metal has been used extensively in the United States since the 19th century. There are numerous, a stroll around Ohio City, will quickly, I tell people about this, like, oh yeah, there's one over there, and there's one over here, there's one over here. Everybody in the neighborhood knows, familiar, has seen standing seam metal roofs in the neighborhood. And rooftop solar is an important part of the long-term sustainability of this house, our city, and the planet. So thank you. Me to field any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local design review committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is Donna Gregonis, Neighborhood Development Director for Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West Development Corporations. So Mr. Hovis did present to us a few weeks ago, and the committee did deny this as presented because they're most concerned with how the standing seam would look from the street. But there were some other suggestions that they had, and I can list those. So the use of metal or asphalt style shingle from the front, and maybe the roof portions projecting the gable, and then use metal on the rear of the house, and to lose one panel of the solar array and push back the entire array slightly so there's a small setback from the front, if that makes sense. And then also another suggestion was to use, maybe look for a standing seam roofing in a color that matches the front roof. From then using the solar array starting to the rear, because then it would be less visible that the roof material would be changing if they were to match the color, and maybe the changes of materials would take place in the valleys of the roof, or etc. But they were trying to figure out ways to get some metal roofing and the solar, but it was denied as presented because it is very visible from the street. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gregonis. We'll move on to staff feedback or others in attendance from the city. I do see Mr. Brunch's hands up, and then did the councilman take it in?
Could I actually respond to that feedback?
How about we hear from the staff, and then we'd love to hear from you before we go into the commission feedback.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some additional information that was sent by Yellow Light, the contractor, and I need to confirm with Mr. Hovis that is what I am showing right now the correct layout, because there was a difference between what you showed and what was sent in for the permit application.
Yeah, that's possible. They had mentioned that the particular panels they'd originally quoted, they have not sent me this, but that those particular panels are not available. There's a different, slightly better panel they were going to offer at the same price. They may have determined they can get a better packing of panels this way. I don't think it impacts that's not going to impact the visual aspect very much, but it's
So-
the same general gist.
So this is what has been sent, and good description of where the panels will be. They also sent in how they would show up in a 3D model in the different views. And this is a good example that all projects are taken individually and on their own merits, and they have to be weighed in their own manner for what is appropriate to each project. And where we can look at precedent, and yes, there are roofs, as were discussed, metal roofs and solar panels. Each of those were done on their own and in their own context. And for new construction, metal roofs are appropriate. Did we see the metal roof? Okay, so some of these are new roofs for new construction, like the one here. This was replacing, we saw this a few years ago where they replaced a substandard roof and they were tying into the new construction because this was all new. So that was appropriate for this. There's new construction here. This one on the main building, this is the only section that has, but the garage all has it, and this is all a new addition as well. So contextually, where the roofs go on, were appropriate for those buildings at that time. Same with the solar panels. Most of these are new construction. Couple of them are outside of the historic district, so they would not fall under the same design review standards that this house does, that we're reviewing today. And the Great Lakes Brewing one is appropriate for what it was for its building and where it's set back and how it's attached. So that was dealt with that way. So we'll confirm that metal roofs do date back to the 1700s, and they became popular in America in the 19th century. They weren't quite as available in the beginning because they had to be imported from Europe, and until we had rolling mills built here where you could make the more flat and less expensive, then they started getting more use. Generally, they're for roofs with a gentle incline, as you can see here from this local advertisement from 1885. You can see how they're installing them. And then there were different materials that were used. And tin was the most popular one later, and you could paint that different colors. That's why you would see red or patinaed green to match the patinaed copper. The two main ones that would be appropriate to the period are either batten seam or standing seam. As I travel around, I usually take pictures just in case I need examples, and there are several examples of some historic roofs of this nature throughout the state, so that we don't necessarily have here. So it's always good to have other examples from around. So I have a few pictures from this is Yellow Springs, Ohio. So applying the Secretary of the Interior standards, repaired rather than replaced, but then again, this would have been a slate roof due to the pitch and the time period, most likely. I tried to look at old building permits to confirm, because later on they would tell us what the building materials were, but early, there was no building permit for this, so it predates 1888. And the other permits on the street did not have any of the information, so I couldn't pull anything from that. So, but we need to make sure that we're keeping the historic character of the building and maintain visual qualities. So appropriate replacements here would be slate, synthetic slate, metal shingles, architectural asphalt shingles, or dimensional asphalt shingles. And an example of one of them was here. Again, not here in Cleveland, but you get an idea of what it could look like. So we are in favor of green building practices, absolutely, and commend all the work that's been done to save this building. The National Park Service has give guidance on solar panels in general, and if they cannot be seen from the ground, they will generally meet the Secretary of Interior standards, and that these are better applied to low pitch or flat roofs. So in this proposal, there is a large, the one on the south roof, roof 1, would not be visible or have low visibility, but the south roof 2 would have a high visibility at this point. So as proposed, it would not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards as proposed. So that's all the information that I was able to pull for this. So thank you.
Julie, you're muted.
I'm the one who's muted. So thank you, Mr. Brunges. We'll move on to Councilman McCormick.
Madam Chair, appreciate you having, I always do that, so I'm glad someone else does as well. Thank you for having me this morning. Madam Chair, appreciate the commission hearing this case. Let me first start by saying that, the Hovis family has been not only an incredible part of our community as human beings, both involved in all sorts of volunteer efforts, programming, our recreation league. If we think about an ideal community member and family, they are it. So I know that this commission is not in the business of the humans, but more of the structures. But I did want to start by saying that we are extremely proud to have them in the neighborhood, and they've been a tremendous positive contributor to our community. And that translates to their home as well, Madam Chair. As has been noted, they meticulously restored a historic structure in the neighborhood, similar to, quite frankly, what I did, spent more money than they wanted to on the house. And it is one of the most, I would say, attractive and well-restored homes in the neighborhood. So they have proven themselves to be incredible stewards of historic structures in our community and in this National Historic District. So I just wanted to start by really highlighting the care that they've taken to restore their home. Where they find themselves today, Madam Chair, is that they have a roof that is failing for their family and is imminently, having more and more issues every single day. And as anyone that has children and a family, having a leaking or soon to be leaking, threatening leaking, defaulting roof is a huge problem and could really cause a lot of damage to this historic structure. So, what they proposed today, I fully support. This commission has approved metal roofs in this historic district, as we saw earlier, both on new homes as well as historic homes. So what I'm asking is that the commission please consider what has been approved historically in this historic neighborhood, and that is the roof that was presented today. Madam Chair, when it comes to the solar panels, I think this is something that the city as a whole, we need to have a global conversation about, because as I don't need to preach to anyone on this call, the world is on fire. We desperately need to encourage, to subsidize, to do everything we can to promote alternative energies and renewable energies in our community. So this is something that I think we won't solve today, but when it comes to how do we marry historic standards with the desperately needed green energy in our community, we're going to have that tough conversation, because we need solar panels in every home, quite frankly. not just on a few in our community, to really reduce the carbon footprint that our structures across the city of Cleveland and country use on a daily basis. And so I applaud the Hovis family for that investment. I know it's not easy. I know it's not upfront affordable. I understand it pays for itself, but it still takes a commitment to move forward with those solar panels. So we know that we desperately need to embrace green energy. We don't have time. Climate change is rearing its head right now in our community, and we must move forward with this type of green energy throughout our city. The city of Cleveland, including on our nationally recognized historic structures like City Hall, is moving forward with solar. We are doing that. We have got active legislation right now to do that, to put those on buildings across the city of Cleveland, including our historic structures. So, it's not only something that I believe in, but the city of Cleveland, from a policy perspective, the mayor's administration and council agree that these types of units need to be incorporated on our city buildings. So the city is doing it. The city is embracing this type of infrastructure for our own historic buildings. And so I think it's appropriate that we support this type of infrastructure on our homes in the community. So again, Madam Chair, appreciate you giving me the opportunity today. This is a family who has spared no expense to restore not only a historic structure in our community as one of the most beautiful homes in our neighborhood, but has contributed immensely to the fabric of our neighborhood in many, many ways. I believe what they're doing is tasteful. I believe it is in the context of what this commission has supported another homes a block away from this home, quite frankly. I believe it's tasteful. And again, I think we need to take a leap on this green energy because we desperately need it. We've got a family here that is willing to install it, has the ability to install it to reduce their carbon footprint. And I'm asking providing my full support for this project. And again, asking the commission to take into consideration the meticulous work this family has done for this structure, as well as the other historic homes in the neighborhood that have utilized this approach to restoring their roof, which we know will last for many, many, many years, and will allow the Hovis family to stay wonderful stewards of this home in our community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. We will now move on to and open the floor for the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off from the commission? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this applicant, I struggle with consideration of what they're proposing here. I don't fully agree with the argument that asphalt shingles in every form and fashion are so inferior that we must substitute standing seam metal roofing for the installation of asphalt shingles. I appreciate the homeowner's frustration with having a fairly new roof, only 10 years old, failing to this extent. But it's more typical that it's an installation failure as opposed to a material failure. Even if it is a material failure, there are certainly high quality asphalt shingles that could be used in the replacement of these asphalt shingles that currently exist on the roof that would maintain their viability for the proposed 30-year lifespan of an asphalt roof. So I personally would like to see the higher quality asphalt shingles being utilized. I also struggle with the current Secretary of the Interior standards with regard to the installation of solar panels on historic structures. I would imagine that those standards are somewhat dated. I know that we are called by ordinance to follow the Secretary of Interior standards, but as the councilman suggested, things are evolving so quickly that I'm not sure that standards apply appropriately to all structures that are considering the installation of panels. So I'm looking forward to additional comments with regard to that consideration as I deliberate my own opinion with regard to the approval of this applicant for this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mrs. Anderson or Miss Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first want to commend the Hovises for taking on this project back in 2010. I remember the fire. It was a horrible fire. Really, we really thought that we were going to lose this structure. It was a dilapidated rooming house. I'm sure it was, in addition to the fire, in a horrible condition otherwise. So I really commend them for doing this. As for the roof, I have a similar roof on my house. It's a very steep pitch, very high up, very difficult to get roofers to do repairs on that roof. They don't want to go up there. So I ended up replacing it, and I asked my roofer to put on the shingle that you currently have, the shingles that are on the house now, your house now. And he refused because he said he could not guarantee that type of shingle. He gave me like a 35-year guarantee on what I have. I wanted to put the shingle you currently have on my roof because I think it looks more like the slate that was originally on these roofs of these houses. But again, I could not get that guarantee. So I did get an asphalt shingle. And, in my experience selling real estate, most people do not have problems if they put a high quality asphalt shingle on their roof. They can last, 30-year shingle can last and last. They just hold up, they don't blow off. It depends on the quality of the shingle. So I'm inclined to agree with the local design review committee on how to handle that. As for the solar panel, I feel the same way as Commissioner Strickland. Things are changing, and I normally embrace the guidelines of the Secretary of Interior, but the solar panels are something that's not permanent. I mean, they could be removed if the technology changes, or they're able to make them smaller at some point. But again, I struggle with that. I realize we do need to make our homes more energy efficient, especially these large older homes. So those are my comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, I will, while we're waiting for others to comment, I will state mine now. I echo what is being said by Commissioner Anderson and Strickland. I think the Secretary of Standards may have made sense at a period of time, but in current times, I think based on exactly what Ms. Anderson said, solar panels are something that could be reversed and taken down and replaced. So I do think that the solar array is, I commend the owner for looking into this, but my questions are, have you asked the installer to see if they could move any of the panels from the front of the house to the rear of the house? And have you asked the installer if there's a way to move the entire array that is on area 2, I think was on the diagram, the front of the house back towards the back to try to minimize, like, there's that area that is south of your gable that does not have any explored any alternate options, or did they just give you the one?
The actual original plan I had panels on the other side of the gable as well. And there were slightly fewer up front, but they seem to have determined they can fit more up front and not have the additional ones behind the gable, although I'd be all for more. Panels just take up space, and there isn't room on the back roof, and you can't put them on the north side of the roof. They'll be in the shade. They have to be in the
Sure.
sun. And as far as solar panel projects go, there's a certain, most of the cost of putting in solar is a bunch of fixed costs. And frankly, it's just even bringing somebody out to do it. The panels themselves, on the whole, adding more panels is relatively inexpensive if you can fit them. And the more panels you add, the faster the whole project, the faster you can offset all those fixed costs, essentially. So, reducing the suggestion from the local design review to eliminate the panels on the western half of the roof there, which are closer to the street, essentially takes the project into financial non-viability. Simple as that. It just makes the solar unviable, because the fixed costs will not go away.
Sure.
And so cutting the panel in half will then, now, instead of paying for itself in 8 years, it could take 16 years, which now for a 30-year lifespan is a lot bigger question, right? Not that I wouldn't like to, but in fact, I wish I could get more. I'm sort of disappointed that I can only offset 50% of our family's electric usage.
Sure.
But that's the limitation of how much square footage we have. I would also like to say that, I mean, if we were not proposing the solar, then I would probably be looking at metal shingles, right? Because I think that would be an easier sell from a visual, and so then all we're worrying about is visual, and I'm worried about durability and maintainability. I've had too many experiences with myself and family members having failing asphalt shingles. It is really hard. This is a very high and very steep roof. In fact, when we did the renovation in 2010, which was the bottom of the housing crisis in many ways, it was super easy. We could get, our contractor was able to get tradespeople in to do every aspect of the house easily, except roofers. We went through 7 sets of roofers to get the original roof on this house. Not most of that was not actually the shingles itself, but doing some of the insulation and roof reconstruction work. But
Sure.
it was, and that was a time when nobody was doing renovations, nobody was doing new construction.
So we think it's great that you are now replacing it or looking to upgrade this. Unfortunate circumstances why you're having to do this. But do you mind just answering my question? For what you just mentioned, the panels themselves are fairly minor costs. Could you shift at minimum the panels at the front of the house, if not the 6, and shift them back towards the back, so that rather than having 3 rows in the front, did they explore to see if you could fit 3 rows in the back of the house to try to pull the line where the panels start away from the front of the house?
I don't
put them on the other side of the gable to try to once again reduce the amounts that are visible from the street, but still maintain the proper number to achieve your goal of cost savings.
I mean, the goal was how many can we get up there? And in order to get an adequate number, you have to put some in front of the gable. I'm not sure that removing the 3 closest to the edge, when you look at the several examples, and yes, I know a few of those aren't technically in the historic district, but they're in this neighborhood. They bringing them right up to that front edge is actually, I feel like it's less of a visual impact than, for example, the Great Lakes Brewing Company one, where it's clearly they set it back, but I don't know why. It just, you look at it and say, why did they not put more shingles or more panels up there? I think the visual impact is bigger that way.
So it's your preference to keep it the way it is. They haven't done the study to see if they can move it in the back, is what you're saying.
Well, no, I mean, again, if you look at my presentation, what they had sent me before, admittedly, so apparently you see there were two, no, it's all the way down at the end of my presentation, or nearly the end. This was what I had before, and you can see there are two panels south of that gable, but they're now, I guess, in between this and now, they determined they could fit 3 rows of panels. It does simplify installation a little bit not to have a stranded set of panels back behind that gable.
Are your two roofs flush, or is
No,
there
there is a step. It looks like it's an addition, although I can tell you from having done the renovation, it is not. And no, there's a couple of foot step down from one roof to the other.
I guess I'm trying to work to try to achieve your goal, but you meet our requirements. The more visible that it is in the front, that is the.
I mean, I will say that, you know, for example, some of this at the moment, the reason this roof is as visible as it is because the house next door burned down in 2009. It was an arson. And actually that was the rooming house. The house that we bought was not a rooming house. It was just a 3-unit apartment building. It was well maintained, except for the fire damage from the house next door burning down, which necessitated huge amounts of work.
Sure.
So at some point in the future, the way things have been going, it's fairly likely that a house eventually is going to get built over there, which would then, you know, make it hard to see. In fact, the north side of our roof, because there is a house to the north of us, I can't actually tell you how many shingles we may or may not be missing over there, because there's no place you can stand to see them.
The full amount of your roof, understand. And
any
related
part
to
of
the
it, really.
metal roof, did you explore any other profiles, or are you, what made you decide on the multiple corrugated metal panel versus a standard traditional standing seam? Can you go to the
It was just, we had a discussion with our roofer, and that was mostly around the idea that flat standing seam generates that oil canning effect due to thermal expansion and contraction. So having the striations in there gives the standing seam panel the ability to expand and contract without distorting. So it provides a more consistent visual appearance over the course of a day, essentially.
Right. I mean, a traditional, obviously there's varying widths of those standing seams, and the wider you go, you do. I agree, you open yourself up for oil canning, but that's for a fairly wide standing seam. And I think that also is, I personally, I have mixed feelings about metal roofs. I think the more traditional profiles make it more appealing to me personally than the more modern profile with the corrugated, because it definitely does take it in a direction that is not appropriate for the aesthetic of these houses. So that's my personal opinion. I think a traditional standing seam with a smaller or spacing of the seams feels more appropriate in circumstances like this than the modern metal panels with the center coordination. But I do, like I said, commend you for looking at solar and just trying to find a way that a compromise that can help you achieve your goals, but not but meet the aesthetic of the areas too. So those are my comments. I'll move on to Mr. Bonazzi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to regroup because it's like there's two issues and I wanted to touch on both of them. One is the solar panels, which I think could be solved with a rearrangement as all the fellow commissioners has said. I think the other condition is in the actual roof material itself, which is there's something particular about your house when I was looking through all the other examples that is interesting, which is that at the north, I'm doing my directions, sorry, at the northeast corner of your roof, there's a mansard condition where the north wraps onto the east. And in doing so, it's very, challenging to say, because of that seam basically blending around the corner, it's hard to say, we're going to put one material here and another material here, because ultimately whatever you do choose for your north elevation is going to blend over to the street edge. And so I think if there's another condition is like, okay, maybe the change of material isn't as much of an issue, but in this condition, how you mitigate those materials is incredibly important. So I think it also comes down to, the discussion of roof material. And, personally, I do agree that though it would be much easier to install, the solar panels on a standing seam system, I think having that standing seam wrap at such a steep pitch onto the main elevation of the house just degrades its historic integrity. So in that sense, I would agree that, a high quality asphalt shingle would actually be the preferred choice in this situation. Though I know that's probably not, happy to hear considering your disdain for your current roof, which is admittedly upsetting. I would be personally very upset if my roof was failing after 10 years. But I think that's just the situation at hand is due to the geometry of your roof. It's a very important, crucial thing to think about. How this material is going to affect the main elevation simply because it is one elevation in a sense due to that geometry. I don't have a recommendation as to, which to go for. I would probably sway in the opinion of the rest of my commissioners that the standing seam isn't appropriate in this case. And, we always talk about, well, there's precedent, but I always like what Carl reiterates, which is that every house is unique, every project is unique, and it has to be taken with its own considerations. And in this case, my consideration is that metal might not be the right choice. But as for the panels, which I completely agree that I'm so happy that someone wants to have renewable energy in their house, I think it's a geometry problem at best. There's always ways to rearrange things. I get told to rearrange building floor plans 20 times a day, and you always find a way to rearrange something. So I think that's a conversation that could be had with your installer, being like, is there a way to, shift some of these? I don't know if they can turn or not, that you could maximize your space in the back of that north elevation. That's not my expertise, but I think it's a conversation that should be had about maximizing as much as you can on that back elevation, and then seeing however many need to bleed onto the front, to meet your necessary values. But those are my comments on the current situation. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Benezzi. Mr. Brunges?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add one, that the National Park Service guidelines were printed, or the bulletin was in about 2011. So it is within the last 10 years that those guidelines came out. I was in attendance at the design review committee meeting, and Mr. Hovis, you mentioned potentially adding a garage in the future. And I'm wondering that if a garage is built, that might be an alternative to place some of the solar panels to help defer that.
I don't know. I think what I may have mentioned was we do own the lot to the south, and had we, it's sort of a long story there, but we bought the house, did the renovation, we made an offer on the lot to the south. In the meantime, we went $150,000 over budget, and then as we got to the end of the renovation, the people who own the lot accepted our offer, and we had to scramble to buy it. Had they been at the beginning of the project, our thought was to we would have consolidated the lots and put a garage over there. That's not currently a plan. Our thinking, we've kept that lot separate. It's buildable. I think the future for that lot is a house that may have a garage behind it. But that is not, we do not currently have any plan. And what got brought up made a suggestion was that we could put the panels on our side lot, which would require us to put an accessory structure on a lot that is vacant, which isn't permitted. So, and then also, you know, impede the possibility of putting a house there in the future. So it's not, it doesn't make any sense. You know, right now we have kept that lot because I had small children when we moved into this house, and they're getting to be bigger children, but we maintain that yard as a place for them to play. And never mind that then also there are issues of if we put solar panels down closer to ground level, they would be shaded by then. When we first moved here, there was not a house to the further south lot. There is one now. It was built a couple of years ago. So any solar panels down there would be shaded. In any case, it's a moot point. You can't do it. The place to put solar is up high where it doesn't get shaded, and these are where you put panels up high so they don't get shaded. You know, I think if you look at the examples, right? Well, this is not my presentation again, but my examples on slide 14. I don't think the visual impact slide 14, so one up of other examples in the neighborhood and nearby, one slide back. You know, probably in some ways the best example would be the greenhouse. That's the one on Bridge. I believe that one is in the historic district. It's fairly close. The panels come right up to the edge, and it's hard to see what, you know, what would the benefit be of removing two panels. I think that it would make the panels more visible by if you had removed the two panels closer. Again, I also say the Great Lakes Brewing Company example in the bottom left, I think that actually makes the panels more visible than if you had extended them all the way so that they were closer to the front edge of the roof. Would actually reduce the visual impact if you ask me, but that's a personal opinion. Again, the solar is one thing, and that is the thing that we would like to do. The solar also kind of is affecting the roof choice, right? Standing seam is the preferred roofs for solar for the purposes of attaching, right? And then on top of it, we have a concern. And the U.S. Department of Interior guidelines, I did go look those up. It does say that in the event of, you know, if you have a situation where maintainability is a concern, and again, in today's environment, the difficulty of getting skilled labor to get up on a roof, right? Especially in this area, roofers don't want to work on this roof. They want to go out work on ranch houses out in Geauga County or out in North Ridgeville, you know, out in the, you know, low roofs. They don't, it is hard to find somebody who, and so we want a roof that is solar compatible, right? Will last hopefully, and I think there's no argument here that the standing seam metal is going to be superior durability compared to even the best asphalt shingles, right? So the maintainability, and you know, at the moment I also have a roof that is in distress, and I really, you know, we have made all the arrangements in good faith. I tried to get feedback. I got, and you know, we look around and say, you know, and when I get told, and some of it too, to be fair, I went into the design review meeting unaware that this was going to be controversial in some fashion, considering again the numerous examples that already exist on, you know, both new and historic rehab houses in their neighborhood. There's numerous ones. I guess I went in a little underprepared, but I felt that that committee was unreasonable and seemingly unaware of what was in the neighborhood. I didn't realize, I guess I didn't realize it was my responsibility to educate them about the neighborhood. So I wasn't prepared for that. I tried to be better prepared this time.
We appreciate the presentation and,
I have a roof that needs to be repaired. I know everybody wants to say, oh, just get magic somebody into existence who will go up there and you can, button up the roof for the moment. I can't. It's hard. I mean, first off, part of the problem is the specific shingles we got. I've had multiple roofers tell me now, it turns out those were total crap. But what ones can I buy today that we don't. That's the reality of I'm sure they did their accelerated life testing on those shingles back in the day, but the reality, they didn't hold up under real world conditions. And that, asphalt shingles are a commodity project. They are, mass produced as cheaply as possible. Corners get cut. I just don't want to risk it again. It is so difficult to get anyone to work on a roof. I really would like to get this roof replaced in a way that I can have confidence, that I actually don't, I think if we put a standing seam metal roof up in there, I will not need to address that roof again in my lifetime.
okay, well, let's, in the interest of time, I'd like to keep the conversation moving along, and if you don't mind, to conclude the commission's, questions so that, we can, then, decide what direction we need to go here. Mr. Benezzi, I still see your hand up. Did you have additional questions, or was it just left up?
Oh, no, that was just a mistake. My bad.
No problem. Thank you. Ms. Bailey, I saw your hand up, but it appears it went down. Did you have a question or question?
No, I mean, I did had it up, but I don't want to open up another concept because I understand and I appreciate Mr. Hovis for going environmental, trying to bring solar panel, trying to bring another option in for clean energy. I really appreciate what your was to bring more than 50% energy into your home. And that's your goal. And I really appreciate that. But also, in a way, agree with the commission, but also had another option to think about. I was looking at my phone, but then I don't want to open up some other option that Cleveland may not be ready for right now. So I don't want to mention that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. To the applicant, I see that your manufacturer also has the metal shake. And what was your installer's view on that type of product that is more of a traditional layout?
Again, I inquired about the metal shake, and I was told that the manufacturer of that did not recommend its use with solar panels. That it wasn't, there was no way to attach solar to the roof safely with the metal shingles, which is why. And again, I want as a homeowner, I want something with a roof with better durability. I want a roof that is compatible with solar. That's standing seam, right? As the best set of compromises today. Tomorrow, I hope that in the future, I hope that the solar shingles, right, which probably do better blend a slate-like look with solar. I hope those will be an option. They just aren't today, right? If they were, that's what I'd be going with. But we are still living in 2021, unfortunately. So this seems to me, this is the best trade-off between getting a roof that is durability, that is reasonably historically compatible, that is compatible with solar, and that at the moment I can get done. You know, I've locked up the contractors. I've paid deposits in good faith here. My understanding is the material was already ordered and has been sitting around. So changing to something else at this point is a $20,000 change order. I did submit this in October. It has been, I tried very hard to get on the Landmarks Commission's meeting in November, and I was told that the commission is very far behind on things.
Sure.
And that I was very lucky to even get on this meeting.
Mhm.
So I've
Right.
been trying to get feedback. I've been acting in good faith. I have made deposits.
Understand, and you want to move forward.
And now I'm if we had to switch to shingles, now I feel like I'm being forced into a roof material that I don't have faith in. And probably I'm out $20,000 in deposit on the metal roof at this point.
We understand the monetary commitments that these things take and the time, and we appreciate your patience. This is the hardest time of any time of every year, let alone a COVID year, to review these types of applications. So we appreciate your patience, but we want to do right by you and the entire community. So I'm going to.
Could I just say one last thing? I really do feel like the maintainability, one statement, the maintainability portion, I feel that is where I keep getting blown off. I would really like if more consideration were given to the maintainability aspect. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional feedback. Additional questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Strickland?
Madam Chair, I cannot support this applicant's request for a certificate of appropriateness for the use of the standing metal seam. So unless he's in agreement to table this, my motion would be to reject the applicant with regard to use of the metal seam roof and request that the applicant go back to his solar panel vendor and propose an alternate layout to minimize the panels on the front of the house.
So you could support, or you would support the solar panels, but would contingent on reviewing the layout with the installer to try to move some of the panels further back on the house. Is that what you're stating?
But I would view this certificate of appropriateness as combining both the roof material and the installation of the panels.
Right.
So I couldn't support both. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Strickland. Again, I don't find asphalt shingles to necessarily be a problem. I think if you get a good quality asphalt shingle, it can last for decades. It just happened to be that product was not a good product, the one that's on there, but I've had enough experience with roofs that good quality asphalt shingle will last and would definitely be more appropriate for the area.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Okay. Other feedback from the commission, or would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Strickland, are you asking the applicant to table this? I heard you use the word table.
Yes.
I would ask, please either just vote this up or vote this down. If you're going to vote it, please vote it down so that I can go ahead and appeal. because that would be what I would do. I would either like to get this approved. I believe that there isn't, I've been, have consulted a lawyer who lives in our neighborhood, who's very cognizant of housing issues, who feels that the precedence that exists says there's no legal justification. I didn't make him come on this meeting. I could have, but he has told me he doesn't think that there's any legal justification for just denying what we're proposing, so that we will have to move up and continue the appeal process. We would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals next. And then if that fails, the Court of Common Pleas. But based on the fact that the precedents exist in the neighborhood for standing seam metal and solar, both similar to what we're proposing, I would just ask that either just give me a straight up or down vote. I guess is what I would ask, because at the moment there's no. I don't think there's, and some of the, like the suggestion somehow that got made that we're going to combine roofing materials on the roof of the house, and portions of it would be shingles. That was made by somebody that I think has no. I don't think that's a thing that any. I mean, our roofer, I believe, maybe is on here, Ian. That is a bizarre suggestion. You would somehow have to mate up two sets of roofing materials for that. I think that suggestion was made by somebody who did not understand why we want what we want, and that
Understand. You would like one material to be
I
placed
would
on
like
the-
one material across my entire roof, so that the roof is good quality for the next 50 years. That we can, this is a 130-year-old house, that I want a roof that'll last till it's 180.
Understand. So
And the sustainability aspect, and again, my understanding is that there's really a particular legal justification because of the precedents that exist in the neighborhood. It's clear that a precedent.
we do,
So,
right, there are
so,
precedents,
so,
but then we look at every applicant on its own merits, and each situation is a little different. So I think we do understand your position, and you would like us to make a vote versus tabling you. So in the interest of time, I am gonna ask you, since we're at an hour and 15 minutes on this. Mr. Strickland, you had your hand up. Were you going to clarify your comment?
No, I was going to propose a motion to reject the applicant's certificate of appropriateness based on the fact that the experience that this commission has had approving projects with asphalt shingles has led to very favorable results. The vast majority of projects that we see involving roof replacements involve asphalt shingles, and I just do not agree with the contention that a standing seam metal roof is a mandatory option in this particular case.
Okay, so there's
My motion is to reject.
There's a motion to disapprove or reject on the table. Do we have a second to that? Or deny as presented?
I will deny as presented. I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second to deny as presented. Any further comments? Okay, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Miss Anderson,
Yes.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Miss Trott.
Yes. So
Madam
Mr.
Chair, the motion passes, the motion to deny passes unanimously.
So Mr. Horvis, I think we didn't. Hopefully, it came through that we do support your proposal for solar. It's the material that our commission is having trouble accepting. So we look forward to the continued conversation with you if you propose to change that material, or if you do choose to appeal it. Then I'm sure we'll be hearing about that also.
could I please get the that statement emailed to me, denials and the information about who I need to contact to appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals, because that is my intention.
Mr. Pettit or Mr. Brunges will contact you offline. We'll move on to our second applicant located at 1296 West 6th Street, storefront renovation, window masonry repair, and sign concept. For the applicant, please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Yes. Hi, this is Melissa Spires with Brardy Partners. I'll be presenting this project. Can we go ahead and go?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this project is 1296 West 6th Street. This is phase 2 of the project. We were here back in June, I believe, with phase 1 of the project that was approved. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the project location. The project is located on West 6th Street, just north of St. Clair, West St. Clair Avenue, and adjacent to the Hoyt Block building. Next slide. Here are a few historic Sanborn maps showing the building location in the red outline. You can see it was an infill project it was built in 1920. Next slide. Here's an aerial image of the existing building with the Hoyt Block building on the left and the Worthington Yards project in the rear. And you can see the courtyard of the Worthington Yards project is directly behind the building. Next slide. Here's an existing photo of the building. Next slide. This outlines the phase 2 portion of what we are actually asking for approval for. The lower right-hand side was what we had previously gotten approved back in June for a storefront replacement in that project. The restaurant that is in that space is, currently being constructed. You're fine. Go ahead to the next slide. And next, we just have a few historic images of the building. This is from 1930s. It's kind of hard to see, but the image on the right is zoomed in, so you can see the building a little bit better. Next slide. Here's an image from 1990 showing the mostly historic storefront and windows on the front facade. Next image. From 2001, where they were replacing the storefront on the southern central, southern storefront bay with a non-historic storefront at that time. Next slide. This is that storefront, zoomed in portion of that storefront that they were replacing. Next slide. So the current scope of the project that we are working on for the basement is just we are adding a stair and an elevator on the south end of the building. So that is the extent of the scope in the basement. Next slide. On the first floor, you can see that stair and elevator on the southern portion of the building with a corridor that goes out to the front of the building. We are also replacing all of the storefront on the south half of the building, and you can see the north half, the previously approved storefront. Next slide. The main portion of this project is we are renovating the second floor of the existing building to have 7 new dwelling units. There'll be apartment units, and you can see the stair and elevator on the south. You can also see along the back of the building, there's an existing balcony back there. We will be reconstructing the balcony and reinforcing it, but it does remain in place. We're also replacing all of the windows on the back of the building, and we'll have pictures of those later in the presentation. Next slide. Here's a photo of the existing roof condition. We will be removing and replacing the roof membrane, and we will also remove and replace the coping and flashing, and we'll remove any existing units that are on the roof that serve the second floor space. Anything for the first floor will remain as is. Next slide. And this is a new roof plan, proposed roof plan that shows there will be some new condensing units on the roof that will serve the second floor. We will locate those in the center of the roof as far away from both parapets as we can get. Next slide. Just speaking a little bit about masonry scope, we'll be cleaning and repairing the existing masonry on the building. We estimate about probably 20% of it will be need to be repointed. And all of that work will be done to meet historic guidelines. The project itself is not a historic tax credit project, but we will use historic guidelines in the renovation. Next slide. Here are some close-up photos of the existing storefronts on the southern part of the building that we will be replacing. Next slide. And here's just an elevation showing the demo of the existing storefronts. Next slide. And then the proposed replacements. Now, when we went to Warehouse District, they did ask us to remove where we have the double door setback on the center bay. They did ask us to remove that vertical mullion, which we are happy to do, and make that like a bigger pane of glass there beside the double door. That double door, just to explain why that one is double and the other one is a single door, that double door will allow us to have an assembly usage in that center tenant space, which the owner is still working on tenants for the space, but that allows us some flexibility to get a larger assembly usage in that center bay, where the southernmost bay is for the residential and for a much smaller tenant, so the single door will still work. Next slide. Here are some details of that storefront replacement. This shows the existing bulkhead below the storefront. We will be reconstructing that with very similar details. We'll study the details of the trim and everything that's there and reconstruct those as closely as possible with new materials. We're proposing to do that with either wood or hardy panels and paint it out to match the storefront in the bronze color that matches the adjacent storefront on the northernmost portion of the building. Next slide. Moving upstairs to the windows on the second floor, we'll be replacing all of those windows. These are photos of the interior and exterior of those existing windows. Next slide. Here we have elevations of the interior and exterior of the proposed and existing windows. The existing window, the center existing window currently is a center pivot window. We will be replacing that with a fixed window and have the single hung windows on either side of it. We are going back with Quaker historical H650 single hung windows and the 450 fixed windows in the dark bronze color to match the storefront downstairs. Next slide. And here are some details of those windows with the existing moldings and brick molds and the existing or the proposed panning profiles to match those as closely as possible and to match those dimensions as closely as possible. Next slide. Here's a proposed elevation, again, just to reiterate what that's going to look like when it's done. Next slide. And there's a rendering showing the new storefronts and new windows with the bronze color on it. Next slide. As for the rear of the building, as you can see, there are existing openings back there, but they have mostly been boarded up. There are a few aluminum storefront doors that are there. We will be removing all of obviously the plywood infill and the storefront that is there and replacing that. On the left-hand portion, photograph there, you can see there's a brick wall in front of the building wall, I guess, and it has some existing openings. I just want to reiterate that the moss color covered wall in the forefront of that photo, that is on the adjacent property, that is not on our property. So we are not allowed to do anything to that wall. There are existing openings in that just go to an open space on the other side of the wall, but we will not be doing anything with that. And we've talked with the building department about that, and they've confirmed that we can't really do anything with it. But the wall of our building that you can see behind that is the wall with all the openings that will be infilled with windows. If you go to the next slide, we can see the proposed. Oh, sorry. So this is just an elevation of our building wall showing all the openings for the windows and door openings. And there also is a lot of HVAC stuff that is happening back there that is existing. Next slide. And so this is what we are proposing to infill all those openings with new aluminum windows and aluminum storefront doors with transoms and side lights, and to put new screens over that existing HVAC equipment that's back there. Next slide. Here are some details. Again, we're using the Quaker Historical H650 windows, single hung windows in the arched openings. Next slide. And the aluminum H600 patio door and the 450 transom window. And again, we are using the same windows that we were using on the front, even though we don't really have any historical markers to go by on the rear elevation to say what they used to look like, but we're trying to make it look as similar as possible and detailing and everything to the front elevation. Next slide. Some details for the patio doors and transoms. Next slide. And lastly, we wanted to address signage a little bit. Now, all the final signage for all the tenants will come back to you guys when that is, proposed. These are just ideas that we wanted to put out there. We see this as a vibrant storefront streetscape, so we would like to have the option of having multiple signage options for the tenants. The options that we see are on the left, you can see a sign band that could be a wood or metal sign band with raised letters and building mounted lighting. Secondly, we'd like to have an option of awnings with text on it for the tenant. And thirdly, on the right, you can see like a building mounted backlit signs. So we would like to have the tenants have those options. But again, those would all come back for individual approval by the tenants. And then for the residents, we have a sign blade that we've mounted to the building. You can see it there on the left between the awning and the building mounted sign there. That would be for the residential portion of the building. But again, all of those will come back to you at a future time. And then I think the next slide is the last one, which just has a rendering of what those could look like. But I think that's it.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. We will begin with feedback from the local design review committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tom Sterinsky from Downtown Cleveland Alliance. We worked with Melissa and Berardi and the owners to continue the original approval from the northern portion of the building. There wasn't a lot of evidence. The southernmost bay was the most original, but there was no evidence that it was the original. But you can see that we kept the inset door openings as the rhythm. But we will lose all of the existing storefronts, but we've tried to keep the rhythm of the building with the new storefronts. And with the elimination of that 1 mullion in that center south bay, we approved this as presented. And I will make a note that we did ignore all the signage aspects of it because it wasn't an actual proposal. And those of you who know me know I'd like to do really great signage. So we'll continue to work with the tenants and the property owner on that as the tenants come into play. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. We'll move on to, do you have any staff feedback on this one, Mr. Brunges, or should we move on to questions or comments from the commission?
It looks good to me. The only recommendation I would have for signage is maybe a signage plan for the building. But that's not really on the table. It's something to look at because up and down the street, the buildings do, like the awnings have uniformity and such, maybe something like that to be considered. So signage standard for the building would be a potential idea.
Okay, excellent. We'll move on to questions or comments from the commission then. Or do we have Councilman McCormick still with us? I did not see him in the list when I looked earlier. Okay, so we'll move on to questions or comments from the commission. Ms. Bailey?
like the design, and thank the architect for, you know, continue with the design and keeping the same character of the building. I just only have 2 questions. Can I see the original existing condition of the same storefront? Okay. One of my questions is, and if you go back to the design, the final design, maybe it's just not shown. Maybe it may not be shown on this design right here, but I do see it. If you go back one drawing, I think I do see it on there, but it's not shown on this design. On the original one, I'm just asking the architect, are you still doing the same concept? At the bottom, are you still continuing the same concrete base where the window storefront going to kind of basically sit right on top of the concrete? Is that same concept still going to continue?
Yes, there's an existing curb there, if you will, that's under the storefront. That will remain.
Yeah, that same. You're still going to continue it. Okay, I don't see that in the color design.
Yeah, you're right. I think we did probably.
Yeah, if you go to the color one.
Artistic
Yeah, you're right.
interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will keep that
That's
existing.
what I need to, that's all. I just wanted to make sure. So that was just my one question, but everything looks great. And just want to make sure this line going above where the big T tenant number 2, that's not a line going in that window, right? That small window go above. The second floor.
That's
It's
the
just
one.
a tiny little line. That's just an arrow right there.
Yeah, that's where we, you mean in the storefront?
No, go above at the second floor window, right there. That line, the window on the left, no, not the center, the left double hung window. That's narrow line right there.
I think you're seeing,
there.
you can see stuff inside the room. You're seeing things.
Okay,
through the
that's what I
window.
thought.
That's
That's
what
fine.
it is. Yeah.
And I didn't hear you mention anything. If you can go back to one of the photographs on the deck, wood deck. I didn't hear you explain anything about the wood deck. Is that part of the neighbor owner? Is this part of the project? You didn't say too much about that.
Nope, you're right. The deck itself is ours, and we are going to be reconstructing it. So we'll take it down and
explain more about that, because you didn't say too much about that.
Okay, yeah, it's still going to be a wood deck. You can kind of see on this view, we'll have new aluminum railings between the apartment patios, so they'll each have an individual piece of that back deck. But we will construct that with new wood decking. I don't think we haven't decided whether it's going to be real wood or composite material yet. But we'd be open to either one of those. But yeah, it'll definitely be a wood construction of some sort.
Oh, so you haven't really decided on that right now?
No, I mean, we're open to either one if it needs to be one or the other, but I'm gonna say it'd probably be composite.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
And it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this project is going to be a great improvement for the street. I have a question. I think this came up in the last presentation for the Northern Bay. The bulkheads, do we have any inkling of what they originally looked like with the, excuse me, hang on. Sorry about that, I have competition back there. The original profiles, or if there's, oftentimes there were, window lights for the basement. Do we have any inkling of what might have been there?
We believe that southernmost bay was the closest that it was, and it was very typical. We don't think that it had, that the bulkheads had window lights into the basement in this building. They appeared to be, but what we've approved in other areas is pretty much that same kind of bulkhead detail with the raised panel. And that continues on in the new storefront system.
Okay, that works for me. My second question is regarding the second floor vertical mullions between the double windows and that large pane window. In the original, at least to me, it looks like those mullions are a little wider than what is being replaced. And I kind of like the original width of the mullions. I think it just makes the windows look more substantial. And I would like to see that retained.
Okay, I think we tried to maintain that, and I think we're showing it's like a 6-inch wide piece there in both the proposed and the existing. So we are intending, I don't know if it maybe didn't come through in the rendering very well.
And maybe it's just the way I'm looking at the rendering. I just want to see that that little wider mullion. I just think it has a nicer proportion. And I do agree that the vertical mullion on the southern middle storefront, I think it'd be better to be removed. So I'm in agreement with that. It's like everybody's okay with that. So yeah, this looks like a great project.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other feedback from the commission? I would echo what has been said. I think it'll be a great enhancement for the district. I think it's a very, sensitive restoration that you're proposing. I would echo though what Mr. Brunges said is that since it's not a very large building, I would personally prefer a signage program for the building, so that you had a more universal, at least on the application of signage, if not across the whole building, at least on the each side of the building. It's small, so to have a different application of signage on each bay, to me personally, is not my preference. So as you continue that development of the signage, I would just think of the building as a whole, versus just its parts.
Madam Chair, I'd be glad to work with the property owner and Berardi, if that makes sense. We did do a similar thing to the West 9th Street lofts, where we started getting a lot of signs and we kind of said, wait, time out, we need to figure this out. Because Melissa and I actually have had a lot of conversations about the southernmost bay and how do we sign the residential piece, but also create a good opportunity for signage for that retail space in there. The northernmost bay is intended to have just one tenant. So that will be pretty good, but it could get a little tricky on that southernmost bay. So I'm obviously prepared to work through that as that gets through there. So if as they get closer to tenants, I would definitely make sure that we coordinate that.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that and know you will. So I appreciate in the sensitivity to it. So those are my only comments. I think it's a very sensitive restoration. And I personally will approve this approach. Other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, would someone like to put forward a motion?
Make a motion. The motion is to move that applicant as approved. Would like to add that the deck design be submitted to staff. And if the staff feel that it needs to come to the commission along with the signage in the future, that'll be their discretion.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve as presented with consideration to come back for signage. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, the deck, my understanding is that the deck part is kind of incomplete, correct?
So you would like them to submit the material for the deck to the staff? Sorry, I missed.
Staff, yeah, to the staff. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I apologize about that. So we have a motion with one condition. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I would second that with the addition that we accept the Design Review Committee's recommendation to eliminate that mullion in the transom above the double door.
Thank you.
I accept that.
Okay, so you accept it. So we have a motion and a second with the amended conditions. Any further discussion? Mr. Brunges, I see your hand up. Is that something that needs to be stated prior to taking a vote?
Yeah, I'll just note that because the decking is on the back of the building and not visible, that a composite material would be approvable as well as wood decking. So it's up to what they want to present to us because it's not, you can't see it. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations. We look forward to seeing your project move forward in the future. Thank you. We'll now move on to our third applicant, located at 7301 West Clinton. Porch renovation and railing. Thank you. I took down my word agenda. Could the applicant please use the raise hand function, open your mic and announce yourself and tell us about your project.
Good morning. My name is Wesley November, and I'm proposing that we can, I guess, just move forward with this. I'm based out of Lakewood, and so I've done a lot of porch renovations out here. And what had happened is we started with this one, and in Lakewood, they don't require permits or anything for just refacing the deck. And so when we did this, we got stopped after we did the deck and the stairs. And as we were going to put new railings on, we had the inspector gave us a pause, and we had to go through several meetings to get to this point. So what we're looking at is the budget that we were in, and trying to just get this as safely done as possible. The photo you see here is what it looked like before. To the right of the photo, the railing on the far right side was kind of just held up by luck. The porch, if you go, I believe it's the next slide, the whole floor, oh, sorry, that's one more over, is just showing the damage to the existing deck. This is proposed what the railing would look like. One more over, keep going right here. So what you see in my hand is the new decking we put on, and the old decking was varying widths all across the whole entire deck. So we just went with the safest, best route, and within her budget to do this. So that's why we chose the decking that we chose. When I first stepped onto the porch, there were several spots where it was sagging. There were several different species of wood on there, and so we just did something to, again, more or less just heal the area, and we just did this as best and as fast as we could. But now we've been in halt to put the railings on for a few months now. And so our proposal is that we can just move forward and finish these railings and put these up. And you can see, like, we designed the railing to match where the windows are. The windows match the upstairs as well. And so we just took that same idea and concept and just put that into the railing. It would be 3/4 by 3/4 steel tubing, and the top and bottom railing would be pressure treated lumber and stained.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. That was it, correct?
I'm sorry?
That was your complete presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't want to move on if you were not done. I didn't want
Yes,
to interrupt
that's
you.
fine.
Okay, so thank you. We'll move on then to feedback from the local design review committee. Do we have anyone here from the local design review committee?
We do not. We're looking for the recommendation. I would have to remember it off the top of my head. This was approved. There was more discussion about the railings. I don't think there was an issue with the deck. It was a split vote. They liked it. They thought it was creative. But I think some had whether or not the railings themselves were appropriate. You can see how they're pulling from stained glass window.
Carl, can you go to the next slide?
This one.
The final slide. Next one.
Oops. Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
So there you go. Recommend that they accept the work done and proposed 4-2.
Okay.
So yeah, it was more about the railings than the deck.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. We will then move on and open the floor for to the commission for questions and comments. Ms. Bailey, did you have a question or comment?
I mean to have my hands up, but can you zoom in? I really like that one photograph, that one right there. But can you go back to the black and white original one? That one? Can you, is any way you could zoom in or not? I have to use mine.
You would have to.
I'm just curious how the rating look right there, because it almost looks the same as very open.
It is the same railing. It just had some extra decorations put onto it. This middle.
Oh,
part.
okay. I see. All right. No comment right now. I don't have no problem with the railing matching in the window, but then I like the previous one with the thickness of the original one. So I'm gonna think about that one. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. November, did you have feedback on what Ms. Bailey just said?
Yeah, well, the reason we took the old railings down too is there was just so much damage to them, just water damage. Some of the actual pickets, it was literally just the paint holding the shape to them. So we just between Christine and I, we came up with this concept, and we just thought that this would be something to complement the home, the neighborhood, and so we started moving forward with it. And I already have all the pieces cut and they're like ready to go. But when we got the pause, I just didn't know. I hadn't dealt with this before, so we just stepped back, and I've been in constant communication with her and just kind of waiting for the approval. I didn't even know that there was this meeting to go to. Also, I thought I was from the last one. I told her, like, all right, we did it, let's go forward. And so yeah, it's she's got a couple kiddos there, and I just wanted to get something in as quickly as possible that she had really wanted. And so the longevity of the materials, I mean, are timeless. And so this will be something that she just has to do once, and then won't have to worry about for many years. But most of the railings in there, you can see on this photo to the right, when these railings were originally constructed, the wood goes inside the stone, and it was just so rotted. We really weren't even using tools to get it. We were just pulling the pieces apart. The prior photo with those big shields in the inside, that was what the previous homeowner had done. So I don't know. I mean, that wasn't original. The last owner was an artist in the neighborhood, and he had created those pieces. But those were just plywood, and plywood, so many layers, and those were literally just pulling apart like paper. So there was so much damage to the existing deck that even walking to the front door, it sagged and moved in so many places. And you can see in this photo, the first step was only like 3 inches off the ground. So you have like a weird step to get up and then move forward. But I mean, now you can park a car on the deck if you need to. It's secure and safe. And we just really like to put up these super cool railings.
Sure. We appreciate the feedback for that, or on the railings. Ms. Anderson, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I'm fine with all the decking. That totally makes sense. I have problems with the metal railings. The metal railings mimicking the leading in the glass window. That's not something that is, there's any real precedent for that kind of thing. And the original railings, minus the shield was, obviously put on recently, but the original railings, there's such a nice, I'm sorry, the spindles, the original spindles, it's such a nice refined profile. And I would think that it would not be that difficult to get somebody with a lathe duplicator or maybe Cleveland lumber or something to create something like that. So that's something that I love those little elegant railings and diamond spindles, and I just hate. I don't. The replacement is, again, it's not. It doesn't have a historical grounding. The narrow spindles, they do. That's something that's typical for the area, for that vintage house. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Bailey, I see your hand up again. Is that, did you have an additional comment, or is that just left up from previously? Okay, so that is down. Other questions or comments from the commission?
I just raised my hand, Madam Chair.
Ms.
So,
Strickland?
looking at this slide right here, it indicates that the spindles, I guess you'd call them, are pressure treated 3/4 inch plywood shaped and cut using a CNC machine. Did you say that the rail was metal?
Yes, they're metal. This was original concept, but we went with the metal, and so I was going to just make a sample out of it with the specs and the sizing. If I could just revert back to the last comment on the spindles, anything can be made, of course, and with a lathe and a duplicator piece, on average, I know, I would say at least 70% of all the artisans in Cleveland area, myself included, I do everything from metal and concrete and woodworking, and specialize in like fine woodworking. I've designed multiple restaurants and stores and whatnot. On average, out here is $75 an hour per artisan, and each spindle is within an hour of prep time of how you have to do it. So I mean, anything can be done, but it's also something where, we don't want to spend $10,000 in railings.
Did you say that these metal rails are already fabricated?
Yeah, well, they're all cut out, some assembly required, but everything's set and ready to go.
How does the top and bottom rail compare dimensionally compared to the original?
The top and bottom rail are identical to what was there before. It's a same sizing, thickness, the radius for the handrail, and they have a channel inside of them that the top and bottom of the railing sits inside and then is bolted to the wood.
Yeah, this particular picture gives me the impression that the top and bottom rail are considerably smaller. And it might be just perspective as to, in terms of how far away, the picture was taken. But I'm glad to hear that the top and bottom rail are similar or identical in size to the existing.
Yeah, they're pretty much the same pieces. So we'd be putting in more or less the original top and bottom, and then just replacing where all the spindles would be.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Anderson that a turn spindle, even if it wasn't exactly the same as the original, is what I would prefer to see. But I could support this if this is the homeowner's preference.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Ms. Bailey, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, I didn't hear that it was made out of metal. I did see the photo of the wood on there. So what type of metal it is and how would it hold up against the weather? So I need to know what type of material, what metal it is.
It's a 3/4 by 3/4 box tubing, 1/8 inch wall, cold rolled steel, and multiple paint is on it. I have a friend of mine who is actually a lab tech at Sherwin-Williams. So the paint provided, the first primer actually neutralizes the material to where rust is not proof, but it's rust resistant. And then there's several layers of paint over that, which makes it stronger than powder coating. So longevity is, this is years and years and years.
So are you relying on the paint to make it rust proof, but not the material itself?
Well, metal in its entirety, if it's exposed, can rust, but it's 1,000 times stronger than any wood that we would get. And where the wood had already failed so quickly before, wood is a natural material that expands and contracts with all the weather, and it more or less breathes. So with the moisture, Cleveland, we get the extremes of all weather. And so longevity wise, this is impenetrable to the elements.
And then I'm glad you mentioned the thickness of the top railing and the bottom. So how are you filling in the opening or the connection where the wood used to be at? And I could see the hole where the woods used to be at in the stones. So how are you addressing those?
The railing goes inside those pieces.
Yeah, I know.
No,
So
like the pieces we're making, we're using the original holes. The one on the far right has sunk a little bit, so we just have to open the top, but we're refilling the bottom end where you can't really see that we have removed or replaced it. So it'll look identical. We're using the same facade and connecting points for the materials. So if the pieces were there originally, if they were actually worth keeping, then I would have just replaced all the spindles with this design. But everything, it was literally just crumbling apart. And so that's where it'll look identical to how it was, just with different spindles.
I agree with my commission members. I didn't realize this was metal. I thought it was wood. The design itself, I don't have no problem with it, but I prefer the wood material. But that's what the owner is looking at. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. I echo much of what is said, that I think the original spindle, which is ironically, I have a Dutch Gambrel and have the same spindles in my own house, which are costly to get returned, very much so, because I've had to get a few returned, made because of rotting, is my preference. But I think this is something that's reversible too, that if you're using the same holes within the stone, the masonry, this central section is something that I think I can get behind and support. My preference though is the spindles. My question though is, what are you doing for the handrails of the stairs? I see on the existing stairs there was a metal handrail there, I believe. Carl,
Yeah.
could you go back a few? Or a current picture that shows the handrail on the stairs. There you go. Will you be replacing those handrails on either side of the stairs with matching complements?
The idea was to have them matching. I believe those are still there. So if it's something that you guys want there, then we can keep those. I don't know how original they are or what year that those ones were there, but the idea was to have a complementing design for the rails.
I guess I'm a girl for consistency, that I would rather have them match than have two different types of metal railings on the house. Unless these are original to the house, then that would be taken into consideration. That's my only comment, that I don't have an issue with the decking or any work being done with the stairs. Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion? Would someone like to put forward a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Bob Strickland. I'll put forward a motion to approve the project as presented with the stipulation that the stair handrails match the porch rail.
Great, thank you for the motion with the one condition. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey, for the second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, let me just add the comment that those stair handrails, I think, will require a newel post at the base and at the top. I would not like to see the rail, or I would have to see a detail of the staff, see a detail on how that rail might attach to the concrete pier, if that's the intent. But they would have to submit the newel post details to staff for record.
Great point. Thank you, Mr. Strickland, for clarifying that. And so I would work with staff on the stair handrail. Case, any further discussion? Mr. Pettit, could you please call roll and announce the results?
Ms. Anderson,
No.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-1. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We look forward to seeing this new enhancement to this project or property.
Thank you very much for your time. Happy holidays, and I'll talk to you later.
You also. Thank you. Bye-bye. We'll move on to our next applicant, located at 11017-19 Wade Park Avenue, new construction of a single-family home or house.
Hello everyone, my name is Yu Fei. I'm presenting our single house construction on behalf of Davenport Cleveland Development Company. And actually, the address is 1100729. It is a vacant lot on Weather Park Avenue in Magnolia and the Weather Park Historical District. We presented it twice, and this is our third time. We highly considered committee board's advice, and we are able to make all the changes. Next slide. First of all, we are able to rotate the roof orientation. Now you can see it's not a gable on the facade, it's a flat from the street. And to our surprise, it turned out pretty nice in terms of the size. The width is pretty consistent to the neighbors. And we took Mrs. Bailey's advice to rotate the garage closer to the house. So it turned out very nice also. It is a 0.284 acre lot, 3,500 square foot single house. Next slide. This is the floor plan we reviewed twice, and it's a prefab module construction. We have 4 modules. Next slide, please. That's the new rendering. We see the view from the street. We designed the porch according to neighbor's house to respect the historical look. And we rotate the orientation of the roof. Next slide. That's the original look from the street, and now it's the side driveway. We add the side door to the driveway, and we keep the window for the 3rd floor. So it's consistent to the neighbors also. Next slide. There's a back door, and it's convenient to the garage. Next slide. We took advice from the board to remove the fireplace. Now we have a electrical fireplace inside. We don't have exterior fireplace. Next slide, please. So that's the rendering from the southwest corner. Next. That's the front facade again. Next slide. That's the southeast corner look. Next slide. That's a close look to the porch. We can see the front door and the side doors. Next. That's the material we are using. For the first floor, we use all red bricks. For the second floor, we use the crane board. It's a solid vinyl. And we use asphalt shingle roof. And we use double hang windows. Next slide. Beyond the porch, we use hydrangea for the landscaping, and we will keep the original tree in the front. We will trim it and keep it. Next. That's rendering. We would like to blend the new construction house in this neighborhood to respect the neighborhood in a historical looking. And I think we made all the changes. Hopefully it meets requirements from the committee board. Thank you for your advice.
Thank you for the presentation and your sensitivity to our comments previously. Before we go into the design review, Mr. Pettit, you had comments?
No comments. I was just going to report on the design review committee.
Why don't you go ahead then?
I don't think Rob Norton is here from the committee. Is that correct? This was reviewed at the Design Review Committee a couple of weeks ago. The consensus was that all of the changes that have been made to the house greatly enhance the design of the house and the context. So it was approved unanimously. There was a lot of discussion about the lack of railings on the porch, but it was ultimately decided by the committee that they thought that the lack of railings is actually a better solution here, given the nature of the design and other precedents on the street. You know, including, you know, the house to the west. So they approved it. They support it, and they think it's a big improvement.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that report out. We will then do. See the councilman? Did I just miss see the name? Nope. Okay. We'll move on to questions or comments from the commission. Oops, Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a huge improvement from the last design that was presented to us. I think it's blends in nicely with the surrounding homes on that beautiful street. I think the only thing I would like to see, it's lacking dormers, which is something that if you're even looking at this aerial photo here shows it perfectly that, you know, most of these surrounding homes do have dormers. Probably willing to, you know, forgo the dormers, but I would, my preference would be to see a couple of dormers on it. But you know, I like that they are mimicking the brick on the first floor with the shingle above. I think that's you know, a great look, and I'm glad that you oriented the roof gable to be more consistent with the other homes. So I really appreciate these changes that you've made.
Oh, do I need to say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, okay. That is the only concern we have. We really appreciate Ms. Anderson's comment, and that is the only question and a concern I prepared before the presentation. It's very hard for us to add a dormer in terms of the function and the cost. All the neighbors next to us, they have an attic, and there's a use for the third floor. It was like a servant's bedroom or kid's bedroom for the third floor. But now for a more modern living style, we don't design attic use. But to respect the look, we have two windows on the other two sides. So we have that just to make it a contextual look in the neighborhood. And we are very lucky or successful to keep the cost minimum to make the house affordable to the homeowners. So we try not to add any more other additional cost, unnecessary cost. That's why we decided this time we don't add a norm as a front.
Did that help respond to your feedback, Ms. Anderson?
I'm not asking that they do a full build out on a third floor or in an attic area. At this point, you know, the dormers would not be part of the living space, although, you know, it does give somebody the option in the future if they wanted to finish out a third floor they would have the dormers to provide that additional light. I would imagine the roof pitch is high enough that, you know, it could, in the future, finish it out and make it usable space. But I don't anticipate that anybody building a house like this is going to include a finished third floor. I agree that probably that was servants' quarters, or it's not something that is required to make a house functional these days.
Right. Well, I would agree with your comment. My preference would be to have a dormer on the roof because it does add some articulation to the front. But I appreciate the modifications that you've made and the strides that you've made in this design to meet the requirements related to the roof direction and the front porch and so forth. So to me, that's not a deal breaker, but my personal preference would be to add a dormer and move the windows from the sides to the front, if that would align with your design. But like I mentioned, I can support this design as is based on the modifications you've already made.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Bailey?
Well, I appreciate you now taking our concept to lower the roof and making it less massive. So I appreciate you doing that. I do agree that the dormer will help enhance the house, but also understanding that this purpose of this house is to offer to, you know, make it more of a lower, not trying not to make it a higher cost of a home. My question is there a reason why you don't want to add any railing on the porch?
Yes. I think it relates to the design. If you can see the left side of the side door, it's nice to the house itself for the side door. But if I add all the railings at the front, it doesn't match the house look very well. So that's our concern, not to add that. And it's a wider porch. There's 3 feet wider than neighbors. In total, it's 10.5 feet wide porch. For safety concern, I think the extra width of the porch, we address that. And with the hydrangea, which can grow taller than the porch. So it address the safety concern and also give a nice looking. So I hope I answered the question.
I'm just someone that just like to see railing on the porch. And it's more of security. And I understand that you have railing at the 2 entries. So you have individual coming up the front and there's no support going up the stairs. How you feel at least putting something for the staircase, you know, up in the front, at least for that?
We can see the picture 3 here. That's my neighbor's house at the right side, the number 3, and they don't have a railings, and they put, how do you call this, for a wheelchair function in the middle. So originally those houses, they haven't designed for the railings either. We just try to respect the historical record.
Okay.
Any other questions, Ms. Bailey? Or does that answer your questions?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Brunges?
Sorry, not commission, but two things. I know that there is historically a setback on this street, so you make sure that the front of the house is in line with the other ones. And I think it's in the deeds from when it was originally done. I noticed in two of your windows, you have 6/6 here, one in the back and one on the side, where everything else is 6/1. Is that just an error and not caught, or is that intended to be 6/6 on those two smaller windows?
Sorry, what's the question for the smaller one?
You see how these windows, the larger windows, have 6 panels over 1 here. This
Yeah.
one here is 6/6, and
Okay.
this one is 6/6. And I think if that's might be an error or an oversight, or if there's a reason for that, or should it match the rest of them?
Well, one is for bathroom, so we use a smaller window. But for this side, we see.
I think he's specifically talking about the glass, so the
Okay.
clear lower panel of the double hung window versus the panel with the mullions. Was that an oversight? Did you mean to have those two windows have a different aesthetic as the other windows in the house, or is that just a mistake? And should that be a 6-pane-over-1 window type to match the rest of the house?
Okay, John, can you answer this question?
It actually can be changed. It was done by the architect. The architect came up with that idea. So we can actually make them all identical so that we can have 6/1 throughout the whole house. So that's not a problem to change. That's like aesthetics. That's easy to change.
Okay, I think that would be our preferences where Mr. Brunges is going, so you have consistent design of all your windows across the house. Any other questions or comments from the commission? That was a good catch, Mr. Brunges. If there are no other questions or comments, would someone like to put forward a motion?
Make a motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
I would like to have the wailing, but I understand your concept. I'm make a motion to move the presentation as presented. With those two windows, just change it to match the others, 6 pane and it's one single at the bottom. And that's it.
So a motion approved is presented with a condition to change the two windows to be a 6/1.
I didn't hear you.
So a motion you approve is presented with the condition to change the two windows, smaller windows, to match the aesthetic of the other windows in the house.
Yes.
Mr. Brunges, I see your hand up. Is that what you were going to say? Rather than being specific of a 6/1, to say as the window configuration on the rest of the house?
No, but we also do need to see all the specifics on the garage, which has not been shown.
Thank you. So Ms. Bailey, would you add that as a
I'll
condition?
include in the garage too.
To submit the design to staff for review and approval.
And yes, I include that as well.
Okay, so we have a motion with two conditions.
Should we add matching the setback for the,
I don't know if that's a condition or a requirement by the
okay.
Mr. Brunges, do you have feedback on that?
I think if you're looking for consistency on the street, that it should probably match the setback of the rest of the houses. The porch, I don't think necessarily has to, but I think that front facade should be in line with everything else on the street. whatever that, and it might be and maybe it just be in the rendering here, and it might be that 50-foot setback. So whatever, and I can look at the deeds and give that answer if Greg doesn't already have it. So whatever is consistent on that street would be
Does the
appropriate.
applicant understand the request and have any issues with that?
Yes, I understand, and there's no questions at all.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Bailey, do you agree with adding that additional third condition?
Yes, the setback is added to the condition. Matching
Correct.
the west of the houses.
Correct. So we have a motion with conditions. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Pettit, are you clear on the conditions?
I believe so. It's a motion to approve as presented, changing the two windows to 6/1 to be consistent with the rest of the windows on the house. The garage details will be submitted to staff, and the setback of the house needs to match the existing setbacks on the street.
Excellent. Thank you. That's perfect. All right. So any further discussion?
Yes, everything that's as part of the be shown to staff, all those changes.
Agree. Okay, with that, Mr. Pettit, could you please call roll and announce the results?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland, Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Once again, we'd like to thank the applicant for listening to our comments and really responding to them in a very sensitive way. So we look really forward to this project moving forward. So, and congratulations.
Thank you very much for the committee, and we will address
Thank you.
concerns you have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move
Thank
on
you.
to, thank you. We'll now move on to our last applicant under certificates of appropriateness, the Amos Norwood Park, Drexmore Road at East 128th Street. The Anna Arnold mural history of the African Americans. Could the applicant please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and please tell us about your project?
I think I unmuted it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Bob Render. I'm the president of the East 128th Street Block Club Association. I'm also the precinct committeeman, Ward 6T, goes from Drexmore to Buckeye, Southmoreland, goes all the way back down to 118th between Buckeye and Williams Avenue. This project started a little over 2.5 years ago. We had noticed on Buckeye that there were some murals painted in the area, and we wanted to do something on 128th Street that represented the African American experience, the children of the diaspora, and the depth, breadth, scope, and length of the contributions that are made to African Americans, not only locally, statewide, nationally, and internationally. That was kind of the motivation for wanting to do this project. We were able to identify a artist. We had one artist in particular, but that kind of went south. He wasn't able to start the project or complete it for personal reasons. So Ollie Boyd, who's a member of our street club, and Joy Johnson suggested Anna Arnold, who I was not aware of, and she had done projects all over the city. So we sat down, talked with her, gave her some ideas of the kind of the broad scope of what we wanted to do. And then we went back and forth over the next several months. And in terms of trying to determine what would be the content, so we said we would start with the continent of Africa and move current. So that's kind of the project outline. The next, thank you. Initially, we were going to have the design painted on the wooden fence that was upgraded. The original fence didn't look like that. It was kind of weather beaten, damaged, and we had the fence replaced. And kind of after talking with the owner, at the entrance of the street is the passport program. We decided to move the site to the Amos Norwood Mini Park that had been dedicated by the mayor in 2006. The land was donated by the Coral Company, Peter Rubin, and we said that was a better fit to move it to the mini park. Next slide. Thank you. As you can see in the lower left, the mini park is located right at the intersection of 128th and Drexmoor. Originally, before the Shaker Square was doing all of its renovations and expansion, 128th Street actually continued north, as you can see, the overflow project, the overflow parking lot, and it connected at Williams. And after they made those renovations, the street ended at 128th and Drexmoor, so you have to take a right. Next slide, please. That's another aerial view of the mini park. And that's another view of the mini park, probably in the fall. Usually during the summer, there's many more annuals and perennials that are part of the landscape. To the left, you see I'm sorry, right there to the left, there's a little kind of a sidewalk. Right there, there's three aspects to this mini park. One was Amos Norwood, who contributed to it. He was a local African-American businessman. Then there was the mural that we were proposing. And then there was one area right there that we were going to dedicate in honor of Larry Mantle, who was beaten, I think, in 2019 in September. He was assaulted, and about 3 months later, he passed at University Hospital. So we wanted to do something in honor of his presence in the community as a landscaper. So there's three elements to this mini park. Next. It says the original mural was to be painted using, when we talked to Anna, she was, like I said, was going to paint the mural on the wood backing. And after consulting with the fabricator, our project manager, it was suggested that we actually use something a little more, some technology that was available to us. And that was have Anna actually do the painting and then transfer that to I think he would call it, he put it on a backing of, oh, I'm sorry. What he did is I'm not quite sure how you say this. He took it and then scanned it. That's what Danny Carver, Danny worked at the Cleveland Public School of the Arts for years, and then he went into his own business. And what he suggested was, rather than painting this on a wooden backing or fence, to take it, scan it, and then blow it up and put it on a backing of it's aluminum, a 3M vinyl media UV protected inks. The panel will be adhered to a aluminum-based material and mounted. And so we went with that. It cost more, but he said this would last for years to come. So that's what we took his recommendation and used that process. That gives you a little background information on Anna. I did not know Anna at all before I started this project, and I was amazed to find out she lives on Shaker Square, and that she's been in the doing art for well over 30 years. So it was a pleasure to meet her. And one of the things that she learned from this project is that she said she would not go back to painting murals on wood, and would use the process that was recommended to us by Danny Carver. Danny recommended when we tried to figure out how we were going to mount this on the existing fence, Danny made a recommendation of a company that he had been doing business with previously over the years, and suggested that they come out, look at the fence, look at the materials, and decide, make a recommendation how we would mount it without doing any damage to the existing fence. We also got a quote through a company recommended by David Wilson from Land Studio, and both of the estimates were about the same, around $2,000. Next slide, please. Thanks to Tara, I went out and took some pictures of the kind of work that would be done, how it would be applied to the fence, and that it wouldn't do any damage to, like I say, either of the fences, the one in front of the gazebo and the fence that surrounds the mini park. And that's another view of the fence where the actual mural, the mural consists of 11 panels, and then there were 2 additional panels that were added. But that's the back side of where the 11 panels would be installed. That is actually the mural. It's 11 panels, 6 feet high and 45 feet long. The 11 panels consist of starting from the continent of Africa, and we tried to. The thing that kind of guided me through this on some of the content was I worked at the Historical Society for 12 years. Started off with the African American Archives Auxiliary, which is the largest repository of information on African Americans in northeastern Ohio. And then I was a consultant, and then I actually was a project manager for different projects that related to the African American community. And so that's kind of influenced me on me. The other reason why we picked some of the individuals that are in content, that are part of the content of this, is because I was always amazed working at the Historical Society how little so many African Americans, particularly young people under 40 years old, knew about their own cultural heritage and history. So you see that there are 11 panels, and two of the panels actually are relevant to the Cleveland icons, we call them. We always start off with the usual 4 suspects. We call them the 4 horsemen or the big 4, Carl Stokes, Lou Stokes, Arnold Pinckney, and George Forbes. And then we added some of the other historical figures from Cleveland. You'll see down there by the left is what we did in honor of Larry Mano was a bench. Was designed by the monument, Milano monument. They designed it for us, and we had that installed also. That's the signage that was named after one of our benefactors. That was Amos Norwood. He was a local Black businessman. He owned this station, Sunoco Station on 130th, and he actually designed the one on Drexmoor and Southmoreland, and we named it after him. We received money from him. I think it was like $17,000, and the balance of the money for the mini park came from some of the foundations, Cleveland Neighborhood Connection, and the City of Cleveland City Works when they had that program. As you can see, that we added the additional panels. This was to thank everyone who contributed either to the creation of the mini park or the Larry Mano Memorial Rose Garden or the mural that was dedicated on September 18th, and also depicts a little narrative about Amos Norwood and the dedication, Larry Mano and Arnold. Gives you a little more background information about Amos, the mini park. Can see where the mayor, I think Amos himself, Pat Burt was the council person at the time, and Daryl Rush was over community development. And it tells a little bit about the mural and about, again, Amos Norwood. That's the finished mural. Like I said, on September the 18th, we invited 200 people showed up for the dedication. We had a full program. Councilman Blaine Griffin also presented a resolution, and we had a proclamation from the mayor to present to Anne Arnold. I had to thank Tara for helping me understand that this actually applied to the street club. For some reason, I was under the misconception and impression that because the land was donated by the Coral Company, that this process didn't apply to us, and I apologize to the members of the commission for doing this backwards because of my own ignorance.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
for the presentation, and you know, it seems like a wonderful project, and at any point, we're happy that we get to review this. So we will begin with asking feedback from Tara. Ms. Petrus, I believe you're here. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. For the record, Tara Petrus, City's Public Art Coordinator and City Planning Commission. And yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of comments that this is seeking retroactive approval. Ms. Surrender was notified that this project, as well as the one that came through the system for 130th, needed to go through this process prior to installation. So it is installed. They do need to go back and get proper permits for installing the mural on the fence. And I just want to reiterate that it's a better idea to come before the commission before you make significant financial investments in public art, because if it were not to get approved, you've lost, you know, your financial investment. So moving forward, Ms. Surrender does understand that it doesn't matter who owns the land, if it's visible from a public right of way, that it does have to go through the outdoor works of art ordinance process, which is coming through here. So I just want to reiterate that. But I think the mural itself is a wonderful depiction of Clevelanders who made significant contributions, male and female, to the city. And it also has, and he didn't mention this, but it has QR codes on the artwork to get more information on the various figures depicted in the mural. So with that, I do approve it in theory and concept. I just wish I had gotten invited amongst those 200 people to come to the unveiling. That's all.
Well, one thing, Tara, it was suggested because a number of people were hesitant about coming because of the COVID from out of town. I think Lou Stokes' all his kids came and grandchildren, but the Tall family were reluctant to come, and they were coming from all over the country. So what was suggested is next year we're going to do a 1-year anniversary and block off the street and invite any and everybody that wants to come. So I thought that was a good suggestion. The one other thing that was suggested that we didn't think about initially is that we had New Horizons, who did the landscaping, installed lighting, so at night it is illuminated with the LED floodlights. And one of the other suggestions was we did the fabricator put a coating on it, but there's neighbors who are kind of fearful that somebody's going to come and deface it. So I'm talking with Blaine Griffin about getting Sherwin-Williams to provide us with that anti-graffiti application. So we hope to do that in the spring of next year.
And I failed to mention also, there is flood lighting on the mural built into the landscape, and it was approved retroactively again by the Historic Shaker Square Design Review Committee back on November 23rd.
Thank you for that clarification. I was just going to ask Mr. Pettit if he had the report from the local committee.
You just heard the report. They love it. They support it. There was some initial concern about the mounting on the rear of the fence, but they determined that because of the lack of visibility at that part of the parking lot, that's not an issue. So the committee totally supports the project.
Thank you for that report out. We'll move on to questions or comments from the commission. Ms. Anderson, you want to start us off, please?
Thank you. yes, it's always the way to do this is to apply first and then install, but what we have as a finished product is wonderful. And I want to commend the applicant for commissioning a wonderful local artist to create this artwork for the community. Anna Arnold is a very well-respected local artist. And it's nice to see her work. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Ms. Bailey? Ms. Bailey, if you have questions or comments, you might be muted.
Yes, I'm muted. I like the artwork. If it would have came before us, I would have just had some question about the white cars on the painting, but I'm not going to say anything. But could we go back one slide on the support system? I just only had a question. What type of material it is, and would it last long? That's all I wanted to know, what type of material that is, and that the panels are mounted on.
Oh, okay. As just been on my own understanding, when I talked with the installer, we met with them. They put clamps on the fence. 'Cause one of the things that we did not want was do any damage to the existing fence. So what they proposed was this wooden structure that would be have those clamps that would be attached to the fence. And we were concerned about, in case of the wind, the weather in Cleveland, if the wind kicked up, would it knock over the panels? And they said, no, this would hold up against any gust of wind, 10, 15, 20 miles, that it would hold up.
Was those vertical wood was added behind the panel, and then the clamp was added onto?
Yes, they constructed that first before they put the panels on.
All right, thank you.
Those are
beautiful
aluminum panels.
panel.
Those
Thank
are
you.
aluminum panels, correct?
I'm sorry,
Those are aluminum panels, correct?
I'm not sure what that means.
The panels, the material that the panels are made out of, are those aluminum?
Aluminum. Those were aluminum panels, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey, for that feedback. Other questions or comments from the commission? I would just like to echo what Ms. Anderson started us off with. Ideally, as Ms. Peaches also mentioned, we'd like to see these first so that we can work with you to make sure that it's accepted by the community, but also to meet our standards. With that being said, I think this is a very nice installation done on quality materials and really trying to integrate with this community. So I support the design. Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion?
I do have one more question.
Right,
Mr. Winder, is these panels stay up all year long, or do you take them down, or is it up all year long?
No, this will be a permanent installation.
Thank you.
Thank you. The one thing that we are doing that was suggested, we will be talking with the Cleveland Municipal School District. We have Rice School. There's several elementary schools in the area. And what is being proposed that maybe we can do field trips and have the kids come by maybe with a box lunch or something and spend a half an hour or something. They can bring out and learn about their own history and the contributions that children of the diaspora have made. One of the things that most people don't realize that John Patterson Green, the father, he was the first Justice of the Peace, first Black senator, and he's the one that wrote the legislation that created Labor Day in the state of Ohio. And then 4 years later, it was adopted by the federal government, and that's how we got Labor Day.
Interesting. Learn something new every day. I was not aware of that myself.
Yeah, he
Well,
went to
thank you for
Central,
that
went to
education
Central,
moment.
he went to Central, he was a graduate of Central High School.
Excellent. That's really interesting. Thank you for educating us also. Miss Anderson, you had your hand up a minute ago.
I was going to just make a motion that we approve the mural as presented.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do we have a second?
I have a second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
Yes, I would like to add on the motion. Mr. Rendo, did you mention about possible adding some type of coating on for anti graffiti?
Yes, it was suggested by Councilman Blaine Griffith, my councilman, and they said that would probably give another layer of protection in case someone came along and decided they wanted to mark it up or deface it.
Okay. If you do that, to share that information with staff, that can be part of the motion. That can be part of the staff.
Okay, so
To
you,
share that spec information with staff when you do get to that point.
Okay, will do.
Ms. Anderson, do you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, to apply the anti-graffiti coating.
Okay, thank you. So we'll add that as a condition to submit any additional coatings to staff. One last comment is Ms. Peterston wants to remind that to make sure that you use a permit application to get building and housing permit.
Yes.
This is one step in getting that final approval.
Thank you very much. I'm in the process of doing that.
Okay, excellent. Any further discussion?
One more, sorry. Tara, you mentioned that the mural already has floodlights lighting up the area because Mr. Render mentioned that they were thinking about putting lighting, but you mentioned afterwards that it's already lighting the mural, right?
Yeah, there's some lighting along the front of the panels, I believe. Are they working lights, Mr. Render?
They're working. When they were installed, it was LED and they come on automatic. What is that? There's a, they come on at
solar.
Yeah, solar. They come on in the evening, they go off in the morning.
Okay, so you have enough lighters. There's no plans of adding anything that's part of this project.
No, there's a near the gazebo, there's the Cleveland Public Power put a utility pole. That's where the power comes from. And there's lights already in place in the gazebo. So there's a street light right across the street. So there's more than enough light.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Miss Anderson,
Yes.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer. I'm sorry, Mr. Bonezzi,
Sorry, my headphones were acting up, but yes.
thank you. Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a nice day.
You too. That concludes our certificate of appropriateness. The final item on our agenda is Design Review Committee appointments. Mr. Pettit, could you give us an overview?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 3 new appointments for consideration today. 2 of them are additional members of the Ohio City Design Review Committee. And forgive me if I mispronounce either of these names, Marika Shiori Clark and Christopher Lesser. And then we have a replacement member on the Franklin West Clinton Design Review Committee, Brennan Teeter. And rather than me summarizing their qualifications, I guess I would just ask them to introduce themselves and explain their interest in being on the design review committee of the Landmarks Commission.
We'd like to welcome all three of you. Mr. Lesser, would you like to start and give us a quick overview about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Lozier. I am an architect with DLR Group in Cleveland, and I am a fairly long-term Ohio City resident. I am really excited to have been nominated and appointed to and to be a part of this design review committee for Ohio City Historic District. I think my experience as an architect working in the field for over 15 years has given me a perspective with both new construction as well as historic work that gives me a unique perspective that I think I'm excited to bring to the table for the Ohio City Historic District Design Review Committee.
Thank you for that introduction of yourself. Ms. Clark, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Marika Shioidi Clark. Yeah, my background is also architecture as well as urban design. I have also lived in Ohio City for about the last 10 years and have been very involved with a number of design-related projects in the neighborhood and as well as a number of creative placemaking projects. And I'm just really excited to be able to kind of also help assist in continuing to kind of grow and improve the neighborhood that I care about a lot in Cleveland. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that overview also. We'll move on to Brennan Teeter.
Hi, I'm Brennan Teeter. I do not have a background in architecture, but my husband and I own a couple properties over on West Clinton and right around the corner on West 58th. We lived on West Clinton for almost 10 years, and we own a lot on West Clinton that we are considering building on, all of which fall in the historic district. We currently are living on Edgewater, which there is talk of our community going on the historic district as well over here. And so I just wanted to get involved and kind of learn more. I was a block club chair and learned a lot about the design review committee, and I'd like to just kind of do some more learning and help keep things going in our neighborhood the way they're going.
Excellent. Thank you for that overview also. We'd like to welcome all of you to the your respective committees and look forward to your feedback and participation in the reviews of all the projects going on in your neighborhoods. So welcome.
Thank you.
And we would just need a motion from the commission to appoint the three new members to the respective committees.
Would someone like to make that motion?
Make a motion to approve each, approve Ms. Branning, approve Ms. Lauser, to approve Ms. Clark.
And their appointment to their respective committees? Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
This is Alan. I'll second.
Excellent. Thank you. That was Mr. Dreyer who made that second. Is that right? All right. Thank you, Mr. Dreyer, for that second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The appointments are approved as presented. Welcome to the Landmarks Commission.
Welcome to all three of you. We look forward to your participation.
Thank you so much.
That concludes our design review committee appointments. We'll move on to administrative reports.
I just have a couple items very quickly. 2 days ago, the commission marked its 50th anniversary. December 7th, 1971 was the first meeting of the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. And so I just want to say happy birthday. I don't think we have anything else planned, but you can all celebrate in your own ways, I guess. The other item I just wanted to bring up is that there's a report recently that the Cleveland Clinic is planning on demolishing the Cleveland Playhouse buildings at 85th and Euclid. They're not landmarked. They've been nominated a few times in the past by the commission, but they were never designated. I think we should, as a commission, weigh in somehow on this. I don't know what that path will be yet. We would need the councilman's support to introduce legislation to landmark them. And I'm still trying to determine where we are, where the clinic is in that process, and what the actual facts are of the case. I know that when we approved the demolition of Transfiguration Church on Euclid Avenue for the new Holiday Inn, I know there was discussion about the future of the other churches on Euclid, as well as the Playhouse. So I do think it's important that we recognize the significance of that building. It's, you know, it's the only local example by the architect. So I do think it's significant. It remains to be seen what course we may take in terms of either advocating for its preservation or actually designating it. But I'd be interested to know your opinions on the matter.
Any thoughts by anyone on the commission?
It's funny because I'd actually brought this up to Carl the other day on our site visit, which was a concern of mine when I saw about it. And I know we were talking about it hasn't reached its 50-year mark, which I think it's like right under. I believe the renovation was it's like 47-ish years old. But in my opinion, it's a, you know, we're getting up to a time period where we have to start questioning, you know, do we have to save and make historic certain postmodern buildings to kind of like carry on the legacy of what postmodernism was, which though we live in that era right now, at the time when this was renovated, this would have been a very forefront of postmodernism by a prominent architect. And being that it is his only building in the area, I do think it would be in our interest to see what could happen. I don't know legally, you know, how we go about that legislation. I think Don, you put it really well. I don't know what to do, but I would be very concerned to see it go, just because it's kind of a weird area of historic preservation. It's a style that, you know, is starting to become historic in the sense because it's getting old, and being a very early prominent work of that style, I think it would be something to consider. I don't know anyone else's thoughts on it.
No, I would agree with that comments or the comments. I think it's just, you know, how do we do that knowing that there's already a plan to demolish it right now and knowing the force of the clinic? Just that's my commentary to that. But I think, you know, it's would be interesting to explore to see if it what the opportunities are, because it is a very iconic building here in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Others, questions or, I'm sorry, comments? Carl?
It's just separate from the Sears and Roebuck building?
It's actually attached to the Sears and Roebuck building. It was at one time all one complex. But I guess it remains to be seen, whether certain portions of it could be saved or reused or incorporated into a new plan. We don't know all of that yet.
I think this brings up a bigger question as well for our recent architecture, more recent past. We've always used 50 years because of our ordinance and because the benchmark that is put in there by the Secretary of Interior Standards and for consideration on the National Register of Historic Places. There are other cities that don't use a 50-year benchmark. I think San Francisco is one where they use 40. And is this something we start looking at in our own procedures, in our own, for our own local designation, that we look slightly earlier and we look for buildings that are examples of more modern architecture that should not be changed in the future? So we say, this is a prime example of this type of architecture, or this is an early example of this, but it hasn't reached that threshold yet that we can potentially identify early, protect earlier than would be on National Register. So in 10 years after, it could potentially make it onto the National Register when it hits their threshold. That's just procedural stuff that we would have to look at in a greater scope. But yeah, and I think that was the other question that we came up was integrity, because it is a more modern edition. Was it 83 that it was put on? I think, if I'm remembering.
Yes, I believe it was 83.
So the original building, while it is inside, does it maintain its integrity to reach that threshold of 40 or even 50 years? Kind of, it was at the church down here. Is it St. John's on 9th and Superior? That is the old church within the new church. But it's been well over 50 years, and it's the Catholic Church there. So there are those things that we have to take into consideration as well. So that's just some food for thought for later as well.
Carl, what is San Francisco's what's their rationale for doing 40 years over 50? I mean, that's really intriguing that they've brought it in, they've lowered the age requirement.
I don't know, but they have had that for a while, because I think they did a full study back, I think in the 90s, if I remember correctly. And that I think they just wanted to, when they were justifying their levels of protection, they wanted to, I think, get ahead of it and not have to wait for as long. I would have to look at it. I just know that 40-year period was there for that city. And I don't know if other cities do it. I would have to look for more information on why.
Well, 50 years is our standard, but we have landmark buildings that are younger than 50 years old. There's a church on East 30th Street. I think it's St. Philip, which was, a mid-century modern church, and I think we designating that. Sometimes there are properties that rise above, the 50-year standard in terms of their significance and their history. I mean, these are all good issues to raise. I mean, I do think the Playhouse as an institution is an important part of Cleveland's history. And I think that the new building is, a signature building that in my opinion rises above its age. But these are things we're going to have to look at. It may come to the commission at a future meeting. I think we need to have some more discussion and see what we can or want to do at this point in terms of stepping into that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we look forward to to seeing, where this goes and what opportunities we have to related to this facility, because it is, it does have an important role within the Cleveland history, like you said. And how do we respect that at this point?
And I'll keep you posted on that. Otherwise, that's all I have for today.
Okay. Anything else for our agenda today?
I just have the one item, that reminder that our next meeting is actually next Thursday, not on the 23rd. I will send out an invitation later today. Didn't want everybody to forget that.
Good reminder. Okay, so if there's nothing else, then we will see everybody next Thursday.
Perfect.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great week.
Take care.